Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll profile the final candidate for the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony Conductor Search, Kelly Corcoran. But first, joining us now is Dr. Mark Joy, the chair of the history department at Jamestown College. Dr. Joy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
As we get started, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, I teach American history at Jamestown College, and I've been there about 21 years. The last several years I've been the department chair as well as a professor. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, although my family was from a little railroad town up in North Missouri, and my father was railroad engineer on the Chicago Great Western Railroad. My father and my mom's brother went on the railroad at the same time and were among the last firemen promoted to engineer on steam locomotives on that railroad. And my dad was always pretty proud of that. So that's how I got my interest in railroad.
Well, I guess so. Yeah, you got my next question there. But you talked some about Jamestown College. Can you give us a little bit about maybe a little history there of Jamestown College?
Well, Jamestown College was founded in 1883, I believe. And one of the unusual things about the history of Jamestown College is it went out of business in the 1890s. I think in the Panic of 93 or 4, that caused a downturn that really kind of closed the college for a time. And then in about 1907, it was reopened and has been open ever since. And it's fairly rare for schools to have that long of an interval and then to come back. You know, usually if a school is closed more than a year or two, it's pretty much done. But that was one of the remarkable things about the history of Jamestown College.
All right, and so what does it offer undergrads that come there?
Well, I think what we offer that you can't get many other places is a small college atmosphere. Our classes are relatively small. We often tell students, you know, you can get as much attention as you need. If you don't think you want any, that's fine. But if you need help, there's a more personable faculty, and we deal with smaller number of students. We have a very strong liberal arts emphasis. Everyone has a general education core that requires study in several different liberal arts. So those are some of the real distinctives of Jamestown College, I think.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, and as I understand, of course, you specialize in talking and teaching about, and I guess, and researching the history of railroads in early North Dakota and Minnesota. Can you take us back maybe to the expansion of the railroad in the U.S., I say, after the Civil War?
Yeah. The Western railroads, there was hardly anything west of the Mississippi before the Civil War. There was a little bit of track into Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri probably. But the Western railroads are primarily a post-Civil War development. The Pacific Railroad Bill that created the Union Pacific and Central Pacific, which became the first transcontinental line, that was passed in 1862. And then the Pacific Railroad Bill that, or the Northern Pacific Railroad Bill that created the Northern Pacific Railroad, that was passed in 1864. Abraham Lincoln signed both of those bills. The first transcontinental railroad, they had been debating that ever since the war with Mexico, and then about the same time we settle on the Pacific Northwest with Britain. And once we have control of the land all the way across, there was talk about the railroad ever since. But before the Civil War, it always got caught up in the sectional issue, that the South wanted the first line in the South and the North wants it in the North. And so while the South isn't represented in Congress, the Republican Congress that had been pushing for the railroad passed the Pacific Railroad Bill, although not much was done on building that first line until the war was over. The Western railroads, economic historians often say they were built ahead of demand, meaning that they didn't build them because there were people along the way that needed a railroad. They built them so that the demand would be created. When people went out there and settled, then you would have crops and timber and minerals and cattle to be moved on the railroad. So it was kind of like that baseball movie, you know, if you build it, they will come. So it was built with the intention of then the people will come.
Okay. Well, Mark, can you talk some maybe about the involvement of James J. Hill and Norman Kittson in the early days?
Mm-hmm. Well, Hill was one of the most important railroad developers in the region, and he is most known for the Great Northern, which was, the interesting thing about the Great Northern is it was built a little bit later and did not get a land grant from the federal government, like the first 4 transcontinental railroads all got land grants, including the Northern Pacific. I asked Donald Hofsummer, that teaches over at St. Cloud State in Minnesota, is a expert on railroad history, and I asked him once why the Great Northern didn't get a grant, and he said it's pretty simple. It's because the first railroads had poisoned the well. There was so much corruption involved with a lot of them that by the 1880s, when the Great Northern was starting, the Congress didn't want anything to do with any more land grants. Now, Norman Kittson, one of the interesting things about him is he is a fur trader. Then he's also involved in the riverboat trade between the Fargo-Moorhead area and Winnipeg. And then he gets involved in the early railroads. Some of these investors, you know, became fairly wealthy, but they didn't start with a great deal. So Kittson is interesting because he's connected to all 3, the fur trade and the steamboat era, and then some of the early railroads.
Well, you talked a little bit about Northern Pacific, but can you tell us about the Northern Pacific and the first tracks to be built in, I guess, what was then the Dakota Territory?
Yeah. Well, I think the first, the Northern Pacific reached Breckenridge and Fargo, I think both in 1872. The idea at first was they want a connection to the Red River because of the trade between the Twin Cities and what becomes Winnipeg, what was the Selkirk colonies. The British had made agreements to bring things through America duty-free, so they came up the Mississippi to the Twin Cities area. And then before the railroad, they were brought overland. Sometimes they would go all the way to Winnipeg in the Red River carts, but more commonly they would come to the river, the Red River here, and then be put on keel boats and go up and down the Red. So the first idea was to get to the Red, and so they built tracks to Breckenridge and then another line that eventually comes into Fargo in, I believe it was 1872.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, and what about the involvement of Jay Cooke with bond sales?
Yeah, Cooke was very important. Jay Cooke was known as the financier of the American Civil War. He had sold a lot of the government bonds that helped the Union finance the Civil War. And then he got involved in a very big way in selling bonds for the Northern Pacific. The railroads were given these large land grants, not only the track, not only the land they really need to lay the track on, but the land, huge sections of land that they could sell. But as I said earlier, you build it, then they'll come. The settlers will come later. So they had to borrow a lot of money through selling bonds to raise the money to build. And then, of course, they're hoping that by land sales and by the operation of the railroad, they'll eventually be able to sell out or pay back those bonds. But Cooke invested so heavily in the Northern Pacific that when it went bankrupt in 73, I think, about the time they reached Bismarck, then Cooke's banking firm, which I think was just called Jay Cooke and Company, it went bankrupt, and that set off the Panic of '73, which was the most serious depression the United States had had up until that time. And it takes about 6 years before the country really starts to pull out of that recession.
Yeah. Well, talk more about the timeline, Mark, of the tracks, I guess, from Duluth until they reach sort of, Fargo, Jamestown, Bismarck.
Yeah. I think the first tracks were laid in Duluth around 1870, and then they're also building from the Twin Cities area so that we'll have a connection both to the Mississippi and to the Great Lakes. And they come to Fargo in I think it was the early summer of '72, and they get to Jamestown by the fall of '72, and to Bismarck the next year. And that's when they were building ahead of the money that Cook was raising. They weren't supposed to build until they actually had the money in hand, but they were building ahead of the amounts he was raising, and so there's a time there they go bankrupt, and then, like many railroads, the Northern Pacific went through times of bankruptcy and then is reorganized and starts over, and eventually then they continue on and reach the West Coast in 1884, I believe it was.
Yeah. Well, can you talk some about, you talked about spring, fall, and just moving along. What kind of work, backbreaking work, I assume, did it take to build these railroads in the 1800s?
It was very much, a lot of manual labor compared to what we would think today. About the only power involved, was horsepower, and the ties and the rails all handled by teams of men usually, and of course through the plains there was not you didn't have the problem like the Central Pacific it had going through the Sierra Nevadas, where they had to tunnel and made inches of progress a day in some cases. But out here on the plains, once they got organized and knew what they were doing pretty well, they could lay several miles of track a day. But there was a great deal of manual labor, and the people often lived on cars that were fitted out as outfit cars, they often called them, that were where they would live, and there would be a dining facilities on the cars for them. And somewhat like some of the other Western railroads, there was a kind of wild frontier atmosphere at the railhead, wherever that was at a particular time. The young men with money and time on their hands, that usually leads to some wild times in frontier towns.
Well, and speaking of that, can you tell me a little bit about, you hear about railroad towns and, what distance, because obviously in the early years, I guess they had to be maybe a little closer, and then some of those towns probably died off over years. Yeah.
People often say that the towns were about 10 miles apart. Like if you go across here following I-94, you're pretty much paralleling the Northern Pacific. They say they were about 10 miles apart because of the need of the steam engines to take on water. I'm not really sure that's really the case, but another factor is the elevators where the farmers have to sell grain. They can't be more than about 10 or 15 miles away from the farmers, because they have to be able to go and get back home in a day's time. And so, yeah, a lot of little towns were built, that eventually then, when trucks and automobiles start to compete with the railroads, those little towns die off because they're not needed to really move the goods anymore.
And of course, there were some other routes in North Dakota, like the Sioux Line, which runs through parts of the state today.
Yeah, the Sioux is part of the Canadian Pacific today, and as far as I understand, always had some Canadian money backing it, invested in it, and it runs kind of diagonally across the state, meets up with the BNSF today in Minot, and crosses it in Valley City. And then the Great Northern was built up kind of an arc through Fargo, up through Grand Forks, and eventually Devil's Lake and Minot. You can pretty much see, where the early settlement is pretty much along those two lines. The only exception, maybe the Red River Valley and the Missouri River Valley, you have some north and south settlement there, but most every place else, it's along the railroads where the first settlement is.
And you talked about a little bit about the Great Northern Railroad just then, and ultimately, what about the merger that created the Burlington Northern Railroad?
Yeah, the Burlington Northern was created, I think, about 1971. The Great Northern, the Northern Pacific, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, and I think the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle railroads all merged. One of the interesting things about that is some of those railroads, the Great Northern, the Burlington, and the Northern Pacific, had all been a part of what was called the Northern Securities back in the early 1900s, and the Supreme Court ordered that combination broken up. But in the 1970s, the government pretty much blesses the merger of the Burlington Northern, probably because they think that trucks provide enough competition that they don't have to worry about a railroad monopoly anymore.
Yeah.
And then in the 1990s, I don't remember the exact date, the Burlington Northern merged with the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe to become the BNSF Railroad.
Well, and then, so you mentioned this a little earlier about steamboats running up and down, but with all the other transportation and the railroads being more complete, sort of it came to the end of the era of the steamboats.
Yeah. For a time there, the steamboats and the railroads have a kind of symbiotic relationship where they are building on each other. The railroads are bringing goods from the Twin Cities area to the boats, and then they're going up and down the Red. But it's only about 6 or 7 years until there's a railroad connection from the Twin Cities straight to Winnipeg. And so then the river boats begin to decline, except for just local traffic up and down the river.
And Mark, you mentioned a little bit, but what role did the railroads ultimately play in development and settlement of North Dakota, Minnesota, and really connecting the West?
Yeah, they really deal with the isolation of the West. There wasn't any reason to come out here and grow large quantities of crops that would have to be moved in bulk or to raise cattle if you can't get them to market. And in the early days, of course, before trucking, the railroads were the only legitimate alternative. So if it weren't for the railroads, the settlers would not have come. The railroads also have a lot of incentive in attracting those settlers because they have all this land to sell.
Are railroads still important today, and are, the roads diminished a little bit in transportation, but what role do they have, and what's the future?
Yeah, they are still essential to the American business environment. People sometimes complain, about things being moved by train that ties up crossings or danger of some chemicals and things. But on the other hand, I don't think we want those on trucks rolling through our towns either. But big, bulky items, the railroad, unless you're talking about the Missouri or the Ohio or the Mississippi rivers, there's virtually no good alternative for bulk goods.
No,
So that's
Mark,
where
Mark, we're running out of time. So if people want more information, where can they go? Who can they contact?
Well, people could contact me at Jamestown College. I'd be glad to pass on to them, citations of where they can look for other information.
All right. Thank you so much for
Okay.
joining us today.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more. Kelly Corcoran has conducted major orchestras throughout the United States and is currently in her 6th season with the Nashville Symphony. She has extensive experience with educational and community programming in order to reach new audiences. Recently, she brought her talents to North Dakota as a finalist for the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony Orchestra's Conductor Search.
As musicians, we really are in public service. That's what we're here to do, and I think that community-minded focus combined with excellent artistry and bringing to a community outstanding musicians and outstanding repertoire is just what I want to do. I grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts. I started out in a non-musical family. The story goes that my sister kind of was the singer in the family, and we were auditioning for a community theater production of Annie when I was in 7th grade, and I got a role. Second clarinet. It was kind of this big deal because I thought, oh my goodness, maybe I have a voice too, maybe I'm a singer too, and it was the first time that I had ever really received any kind of recognition for any kind of musical talent. When I graduated from high school, I knew that I wanted to pursue music. So I went to Boston Conservatory, and I was accepted into the Tanglewood Festival Chorus, and they are the chorus that sings with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I had never heard sounds like that, and certainly not on stage, being a part of it. And I also was very, very fascinated with the idea of the conductor, the maestro, and to be able to watch all these different conductors coming on stage and their persona and the way that they would interact with the orchestra and with the chorus and how they got results. It just was very thrilling to me, the idea that when you're a conductor, it's your duty to really understand the history of a piece, the personality of the composer, the personality of your musicians, of your audience. Let's start variation 16 one more time. 16, this yum, bum, 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 bum. Not that short, no, a little bit more length. Yes, yeah, exactly, thank you. I think being a singer, I can sing something the way that I want it to sound. And I do that all the time without even thinking about it. Even in the Tchaikovsky Mozartiana that we're preparing, there was one little variation, and I just said to the first violins, bum bottom, bum bottom, bum bottom, bum bottom, and Ben said, oh, okay, an expressive accent, and he gave it to the section, and it was perfect. I'm interested in this orchestra for many reasons. This orchestra has a very long history and tradition of successful programming, successful projects, just people who really, even from day one, have cared about making music, for the soul of enhancing the community and the lives of the people here. When you're working in an orchestra, when you're working with chamber music groups, it's all about collaboration. It's all about flexibility. You're having to give and take what you're doing. It's all about creativity and also innovation, that you're creating new ideas and coming up with new ideas. And so I think that this is a great testament to the importance of music education in our schools and why it's so critical that we have music in our schools. And you guys in this community are doing a great job of that. The string programs in the schools here are outstanding, and not every part of the country has a program like that, and so that is very, very, very special. And to me, that signifies that the arts are an essential part of the fabric of life here. Good, 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 good. And it's in the longer notes where we really need to hear a little bit more vibrato, a little bit more warmth to the sound. When you have the moving stuff, it kind of can happen quickly, but that's where our ear hears it if we're not all doing the same thing. Let's do everybody at letter A. And our accompaniment, nice and soft, not too much, very light, almost just barely touch these quarter notes. 1 and 2. I would hope that I can take my experiences and the things that I've maybe discovered along the way about music and what it has meant to me and the power that it has in our community. And if I can communicate that to a young musician and somehow make a difference and somehow have an opportunity to show someone something that maybe they didn't see before, it's really exciting for me. it's like a table, you know, and you have these legs that are there, and you have, you know, your board, you have your executive director, you have your musicians, you have your conductor, you know, you have all these people, and if any of them is a weak link, that table's going to wobble, you know. So really, yes, the music director can inspire, has to have the vision, it's really a leader, and yes, is at the helm of the organization, but all the pieces have to be working, you know, they all have to be working and strong. And that's what impresses me about this orchestra, because I think you have that here.
The Fargo-Moorhead Symphony is searching for its next music director. This season, our Masterworks concerts will each be led by one of the 5 finalists. The decision of who will be the next artistic leader will involve valuable input from the orchestra musicians, audience members, symphony supporters, students, and members of the community, including you. The countdown begins. Who will be the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony's next conductor?
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse for this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funded in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.